Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped and welcome to the headquarters of Kia UK. Now, one of my favourite EVs I've driven over the last few years is the Kia EV6. For me, this car was a real groundbreaker for Kia. Although they'd had the Niro before it as a full battery electric car, the EV6 just brought a style and a capability to the EV space that really shook up the market. And then after EV6, we've seen the big 7-seat SUV EV9, and then more recently the EV3. And those cars are pushing the design language and changing the capability. So it's about time the EV6 had a facelift. And here it is, bringing it up to date with its other siblings. So I'm here today to talk you around the differences, and then we'll take it for a drive and see how good it is. How do you make a really good car even better? Now, we are certainly blessed with the most beautiful weather today. However, there's a building site over there and a building site over there, so apologies for any background noise. Now, the big challenge with a lot of facelift cars is often the styling changes can be quite subtle. So there are aesthetic changes on the outside and the inside of the new EV6, but luckily we've got the previous generation of EV6 parked next to it, so we'll be able to compare and contrast. But the big changes also happen underneath the skin of this car. And the one I want to start with is the one that will make it an even more usable car. And that is its battery has changed in terms of size. It now has an 84 kilowatt hour battery. That's an 8.5% uplift from the previous generation. But what Kia haven't done, they haven't just thrown more cells or a bigger battery at it. It's actually the fourth generation of Kia battery, which is a more power-dense battery. So although it's 8.5% more power, it's actually a kilo less weight. So a more power-dense battery. The next thing, both of these cars have an 800-volt architecture, and what that means is they can support very rapid DC charging. You can go from a 10% to 80% charge in this car in just 18 minutes, or add up to 213 miles in just 15 minutes, if you can find a charger fast enough. Because the new facelift EV6 can support up to 259 kilowatts of charging, whereas the old one was just 239. And I know there are fewer of those, if you like, up to 350 kilowatt chargers around there. Most DC chargers are maybe 100, 150 kilowatts if you're lucky. But if you can get an ultra rapid charger, then you can replenish those miles really quickly and be on your way. And that makes this car really, really usable. I will talk about range when we're out driving, because the range you get depends on whether you go for the two-wheel drive or the four-wheel drive option. I think the easiest way for us to talk about the styling changes is to go point of view and walk you around the old and new cars so you can see the differences. Because although they're subtle, I think they make a big change, especially to the front of the car. It brings it in line with the design language we're seeing in EV9 and EV3. So let's start our walk round at the front of the previous EV6 with the signature light, daytime running lights that just ran round the outside of the headlamp, and then the front bumper design, because this has changed significantly in the facelift version. So now let's look at the new facelift version. Firstly, the design of the headlight is quite different. There's this piece of bodywork that goes into the lights with the lights wrapping around it, with a daytime running light wrapping around that. And then the daytime running light runs all the way along the front of the car. You can see it flickering there, maybe just because of the shutter speed of my camera. And then this lower blacked out portion is different. So the front bumper, very different, but the big change at the front is the design of the headlamps. Much more subtle to see is the top of the wing is a slightly different profile as well. All the trim levels of the new facelift EV6 have brand new wheel designs which weren't available in the previous generation. And there's a new range of colours, including this one, which is exclusive to the facelift. It's called Wolf Grey. It's very difficult to capture, but it has a really nice metallic fleck. You can maybe just see that in the sunshine, and it really sets the car off. Rear end styling changes are far more subtle. Here in the pre-facelift car, If we look at the bottom of the valance, you'll see the fog light, those 5 clear glass elements that actually become the fog light. That will change in the new car, and the rear bumper is a slightly new design as well. So we can see now the fog light are those 3 elements rather than the 5. If I just pan back, you can see that there are some subtle changes around the design here and the lower parts of the bumper, but also this light bar that runs across the top there, that has a digital signature in it which is visible at night time. So yeah, the rear of the car, I don't think they needed to change a great deal because I think it was a good looking rear anyway, but they just changed little things, just made it subtly different. Inside, at first glance, it doesn't look like much has changed, but the more you look, the more you realise things have changed. There's a completely new steering wheel design. The swept screen is still the same as the previous EV6. The difference now is it's running the same operating system that you find in EV9 and EV3, which is much more up to date. It runs much more quickly. The navigation is far better. And I think we might start to see that a little bit when we go out for a drive. You've still got, though, the same menu buttons here, which I really like, that alternate between your kind of infotainment system functions and your climate control functions. And then this central floating console here, again, looks very similar. They've increased the power of the wireless charge mat and put little magnets in it so that your phone doesn't move around when it's charging. But there are some really cool features in here. Just to the right of the start-stop button, there's a little black button, and you think, I wonder what that is. And that is fingerprint recognition. So there's lots of cars out there. You can have different profiles for different drivers that set your preferences on the infotainment system, your seat position, your mirror position, and so on. And that might be on a key or it might be on a button somewhere. Here, you just get in it and it's based on your fingerprint. So you can do your little fingerprint and then it will set the whole car up to how you want it. You can couple that to a digital key, so you can download an app onto your smartphone or your Apple Watch that makes that the key to the car, so you don't need to have a physical key with you anymore. So if you combine the digital key to open the car and then that to set up the car to your preferences, that's quite a nice little feature. This particular car is still a pre-production car, so there are some things on here that we won't get in the UK. We'll talk more about trim levels very shortly. But all in all, I'm surrounded by recycled materials that feel very good quality. A really nice thing they've done, they've kind of listened to their customers. If you go to the pre-facelift car, this central binnacle here and a lot of the dash had basically piano black plastics, and they were shiny, they picked up fingerprints and they scratched. And they've now changed them to almost like a matte black brushed plastic, which I just think looks a lot more classy anyway, coupled with some gunmetal grey trim. And I just think that it will have better longevity. It won't pick up annoying fingerprints so much, and it just makes the inside of the car look way, way nicer. You've still got the massive storage bin underneath that floating console. It's a really, really nice place to be. So I think we'll get some cameras set up and go for a drive. This is the GT Line S all-wheel drive version, so the most powerful, sportiest one with the highest performance figures. But the price you pay for that is it's got less range than the two-wheel drive one. It's still got more range than the outgoing model, but you do pay a price, and that makes sense, right? If you want more performance, if you want four-wheel drive. The other thing, the bigger the wheels you go, generally you lose range on an EV. But let's go and take it for a drive and see what it's like. I'm not expecting it to feel a great deal different under the type of driving I'm going to do, but certainly when you're sat in here, I think the EV6 interior has always been a really special place.
Before we start the driving, let's talk trim levels and price. The facelift EV6 is available in 3 trim levels: Air, GT Line and GT Line S. In its entry-level Air trim, the battery pack powers a single motor, producing 225 bhp and 350 Nm of torque via the rear wheels, and is capable of a WLTP range of up to 361 miles on a single charge. The EV6 GT Line and GT Line S models can be ordered with the same rear-wheel drive setup as the Air, or with a dual-motor all-wheel drive setup. The EV6 GT Line rear-wheel drive is capable of up to 361 miles on a single charge, where the GT Line S rear-wheel drive can travel up to 347 miles. With the all-wheel drive drivetrain, the GT Line and GT Line S form, the EV6 total power output climbs to 320 bhp and a torque increase to 605 Newton meters. The all-wheel drive EV6 GT Line and GT Line S variants can travel up to 339 and 324 miles on a single charge respectively. UK pricing is as follows. The EV6 Air is available from £45,575. The GT Line is priced from £48,575, and the range-topping GT Line S starts from £53,675.
Okay, let's head out in the new facelift EV6. Now, this is the all-wheel drive version, so it has 320 bhp and just over 600 Newton meters of torque. Now, sadly, with the type of driving I've got around Kia HQ here in Walton-on-Thames, I don't think I'm going to get to put that to the test a great deal. But first big difference between this and outgoing EV6 is this new infotainment system, because it's in line with EV9 and EV3, now supports wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, rather than having to use a cable like the previous generation, which is just super useful, especially when you've got a wireless charge mat. I guess the big question will be, and I'm finding this in quite a lot of cars recently, is just what the heating characteristics are of the charge mat, especially if it's a slightly higher power charge mat. Will that overheat your phone? Only time will tell. This is a very short run. I've only got a couple of hours with the car today. It's just nice to get access, such early access to the car, but I will be booking one of these in as a press car very soon. It's got all of the safety bings and bongs modern day cars have. You can turn them off. I've actually got them turned on for a change, and I'm using Google Maps as my sat-nav purely because I found an Instavolt only a few miles from here, and I thought it would be quite interesting to go and take a look at that, and it looked like it was in some nice scenery as well, but time will tell on that one. The thing I've always loved about EV6 is I've spent a lot of time in one, both GT Line S and also the EV6 GT, which is just a ridiculously cool car, you know, 600 horsepower, proper tyre shredder, that one. But they are a very competent car. It's one of the EVs that you drive and it doesn't really feel like you're in an EV, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. It's got loads of space in the back, a big boot. There is a small storage area up front. I'm probably not going to call it a frunk. I'm going to call it like a cable tidy or cable stowage area, but that certainly keeps the cables out the back of the car anyway. But the thing that's fascinated me is having the two cars parked next to each other. You sit in the old EV6 and it doesn't really look that tired and doesn't look like it needs a refresh until you sit in this one and you look at it. And even little things like the steering wheel. This steering wheel, it's very functional. You've got your drive mode selectors at the bottom, which you can trigger through normal, sport. There's My Drive, which is an individualized setting, and also a snow function, along with Eco. So you've got plenty of features. Now, interestingly, that binging and bonging is from a driver attention system that this car has. It's a pre-production one, but the UK cars won't. There's a little binnacle thing on top of the steering column there that's monitoring my eyes, would you believe, and it will tell you when to look at stuff, basically, which is a bit weird, but that doesn't come in a UK car, so ignore that binging and bonging, because I think it would probably drive me mad. But yeah, you look at the steering wheel and compare it with the old one. The old one now looks so tired. And then you get inside the car, especially this central cluster with the more brushed effect. The old one just looks so tired. The piano black thing, I think manufacturers did that to death. The first time I ever came across piano black was when I bought a Discovery 3, and it had piano black trim, and I thought it was really, really cool. And then it just appeared everywhere. And it almost, when I first saw it, it was almost like a real step up in quality, a premium feel. And then I think it was just used so often by so many manufacturers, it just became a cheap thing. And its biggest challenge is it scratches and you get fingerprints all over it, and it looks tired really, really quickly. I've not got long enough in the car today to test its ultimate range. However, I've got, what have I got currently showing? 98% of battery, and it's showing 271 miles. The all-wheel drive one, as I've mentioned, the WLTP range is 320 odd miles, and I think in the real world around the 300 mile mark on a warm sunny day is probably there or thereabouts. Certainly you're going to get more than 250 miles, and if you go for the rear-wheel drive version, then your, I think, real world mileage is likely to be in the early 300s, maybe 310, 320. But that's still very, very competent, there's no doubt there. But again, as I said at the beginning, I think a lot of people still, even though EVs have been around a long time, get hung up about range. And unless the range is over 300 miles, then they're not interested. All I would say is, under most driving conditions, you're going to charge this car up at home. So you wake up in the morning and you can have a full battery and 300 miles of range. How many times do you do more than 300 miles in a day? But if you do want to do a longer journey, the most important metric in EVs for me, yes, it needs to have a healthy range, but it needs to have rapid charging, or the ability to do rapid charging. And with the 800 volt architecture and the ability to deal with such high power chargers, it means that you can replenish those miles really, really quickly. So even a 15 to 20 minute stop at an ultra rapid charger is going to fill up the vast majority of that battery, and you'll be on your way for another 250 miles until you need another comfort stop. When you get to my age, believe me, you need one of them every couple of hours anyway. Suspension wise, really nice and plush. It rides these big sleeping policemen really nicely. It doesn't feel too harsh. I haven't had the opportunity to take it a high speed down a B road, which I'd love to do, but it just, in this kind of environment where you're in built up area and you're driving around in silence. Now there is a sound generator on this car that will give you some more kind of spaceship type sounds rather than engine sounds, but if you want to have that pure silence, you can. If you would rather have a little bit of noise, then you can program that into the car. The speed assist function that I've got operating on this, by the way, when the speed limit changes, so I've just gone from a 20 to a 40, it just gives you a little audible bong just to let you know the speed limit's changed. And if you were using the highway driver assist, so the cruise control function, then again the cruise control would adjust to the new speed of the road. So if you want, you know, the kind of driving where you want to be as fatigued as little as possible, then turn all the systems on and let the car do those things for you. Me personally, I'm more of a fan of keeping an eye out the window and seeing when the speed signs change and adjusting my speed myself rather than relying on a car to do it for me. Ta-da! Now, that is the kind of charger that you need to find to maximize the use of this car, because that's a rapid DC charger. I don't know what the actual speed of it is, but normally Instavolts are pretty quick. Now, I don't actually need to do any charging because I've still got 98% of my battery. So let's head on back to Kia and talk some more about this car. Are there any things I'm not a big fan of? I've said it before, the challenge I find with EV6 is it's just a really, really good car. And I'm not sitting here just only saying nice things, but I honestly struggle to find things I'm not that keen on. It's quite a big footprint car. I'm a big fan of the looks, but I can imagine some people wouldn't be. But it's got that level of practicality. The proof of all of these things, though, is in the actual living with experience, and whether that range increase is something you actually see in the real world, and only time in this car will tell. But I have done a good number of miles in Kia EV6s, both the GT Line S and the GT, the full fast one, and they've always impressed me. The GT especially, I mean, it's a big 600 horsepower car, and it was phenomenal. So I've got absolutely no doubts that this car will be able to deliver on that as well, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's certainly the changes, the refreshes. I think sometimes people are a bit, it's only an update, it's just a, you know, it's a new color or a new headlight or something along those lines. I honestly think that the sum of its parts is greater than you think. The changes are, yes, subtle, but really refresh and really bring what didn't look like a dated car to me before, but now I've seen the refresh one, kind of does. And I think the inside is the bit that really has been brought up to speed, because this new steering wheel and just the new materials and the new dash has really helped bring this car alive. There are a few gimmicky things in here. The fingerprint thing, I mean, it's a nice gizmo, isn't it? But it's not something that I've ever thought in a car. I know, I wish I could swipe with my finger and get my driver profile, but I guess we're so used to it now with a lot of smartphones having that fingerprint entry or facial recognition. It was only a matter of time before that tech came into cars. It's not going to be long before you get in a car and the car will do facial recognition, and unless it's you won't be able to drive it away. I can see that coming, and I'm sure someone's going to put in the comments it's probably in some car out there already. On the way back, I decided to use the native satnav, because I always get grief about not using native satnav and using Waze or whatever's on my iPhone, and I've used it many times. In fact, it's very similar. I was in a Hyundai Santa Fe just last week, and it's very similar satnav. It's got a really nice clear head-up display. I've got lots of information about what's coming up in terms of speed limits, and I've got some roadworks, and I've got a school crossing coming up. So it does help you out with that level of information. The one thing I would like to do is use it just in terms of route planning on a longer route where you need to make a stop and you need to have a charge. I'd like to do that. I'm not going to get the opportunity to do that today, because this car's still got 270 odd miles of range in it, and I'm not going to be able to drive 270 miles in an hour. So that's one of those things, you need to live with it. But I have spent time in EV9, and the sat-nav in that was very competent, and the integration with the charge network is improving all the time. The halo company in terms of that for me is still Tesla. Their integration with their own charge network is unmatched. It's absolutely brilliant, but they're catching up. The Koreans, Hyundai, Kia, their infotainment system is catching up at a rate of knots. So yeah, there we go. I'd love to know what you think of the facelift EV6. Have you got an EV6? Is this tempting you to think, well, next time I might change and get a slightly different style, different interior, different exterior? I'll try and get hold of one of these for a longer period of time and take it on a long journey, stretch its legs. I know the driving part of this review has been pretty limited, really. But then, to be fair, it's the perfect kind of environment to drive around in an EV. Anyway, if you enjoyed that, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film. You take care, guys. Drive safe.